Hello and welcome to Moscow, Russia's capital. Be honest, have you imagined Moscow to be like this? Or like this? Or that? Because I'll be honest with you, this is exactly what I have ever known of Moscow. And there's so much more to see here, so much more than we actually see in the media. In today's video, I'm going to show you what Moscow is really like. And also, I'm going to answer a few questions that I am having in my head since a long time. For example, what is it like to be in Moscow in 2025? Do you actually notice the war here in Moscow? Are there signs of war here in the city? Or is there a certain vibe that you notice? I will show you my personal experience. We will walk through the city, see some of the most emblematic places, of course, but also the places the media doesn't show you. And we'll figure out together what's it like to travel to Moscow in 2025. We are starting today's video in the heart of Moscow at the Red Square. I believe this is probably the most popular, most famous place of Moscow and also the most touristic place. What we can see here is, well, first of all, we can see a stage behind me. I believe they have celebrated the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II here just a few days ago. And then we can, of course, see the Kremlin, the ancient Russian fortress that has been the house of the power of Russia since many centuries. You can see a lot of people here. However, I do believe that this is only a fraction of the tourists that you would normally see here at the Red Square. If you've seen this video already, you do know already how difficult it actually is to enter Russia nowadays due to all of the sanctions in the country. The sanctions that also impact international tourists. So most of the people that you actually see here are local tourists from Russia. I do get the thought of not coming here as an international tourist currently due to the whole situation and also due to the difficulty currently. However, I also believe that first of all, it is the best time to get to know a local Russia. And second of all, I believe that traveling is about getting to know the local culture and especially getting to know the people that are behind a flag. And that's why I'm here, to get to know the people of Russia. Walking around the Red Square, you can feel the weight of history. This place here has been the stage for many pivotal moments of the Russian history. However, nowadays, you can also notice some police here, some military. I believe this is normal though, and is not related to the situation in Ukraine. I'm saying situation because it is actually officially not allowed to call it a war. They call it a special military operation here. And you should always respect local laws and rules, especially because it can even lead to serious consequences to not respect those here. For example, protesting against the government, especially if you have a controversial opinion, can lead to serious consequences and even jail time. So before coming here, always make sure to be aware of the do's and don'ts of Russia. That's important. You really don't see anything unusual here or anything that you would connect to the situation with Ukraine. However, what you do notice every time you try to localize yourself, it's just sometimes a little bit off the dot you can see on the maps. Right now, for example, I am localized very well, but before I was like 3 blocks away from where I was actually at. So always, if you try to navigate yourself through the center of Moscow, make sure to be aware of where you actually are, to not get lost. For example, while we are currently somewhere here, we are located all the way up there, which is almost 20 kilometers from where we actually are. So sometimes it is extremely off, sometimes just a block or two, but right now it's extremely off. Let's see if we can actually enter one of the most iconic symbols of Moscow, which is the St. Basils Cathedral. Honestly, pictures do not show the beauty of this church. I don't think I've ever seen a church more impressive than this one here. I believe we can still enter it. It should be open until 5, so let's give it a try and see what it looks like inside. This is not at all what I was expecting from the inside of this church. I was expecting to end up in a great hall of a cathedral where you see the altar and probably also some paintings and so on. But instead, we ended up in a labyrinth of lots of rooms, but it's beautiful. You can see lots of paintings, lots of art. You can see historical artifacts and so on. So there's a lot to explore here, and it seems to be way bigger in the inside than I had expected. I suppose, just like me, many people expect to find a huge room when seeing its external dimensions. But St. Basils Cathedral is composed of 9 rooms or chapels. They all are decorated differently and dedicated to different saints. To be honest, it was impossible for me to really understand the architecture and the history behind this cathedral and all its rooms. It was a very beautiful visit, however, with an admission fee of 2,000 rubles per person, it definitely wasn't cheap. I haven't seen that much of the city yet, but so far I can already tell you I love the city. It is so beautiful. I love that we are in the center and it is pretty calm here. There's not too much traffic. And what I love especially is that there's a lot of green space here. It's probably even more beautiful because we are here in spring and all of the flowers are blooming already. I love all of the details in the buildings and also the fountains that you can see here in the backgrounds, the detail in the lamps and everything. And I also do believe that images probably cannot even picture how impressive it really is to walk through the city. The buildings are enormous, they are huge, and the walking distances are also very long. In the Alexander Garden, outside of the walls of the Kremlin, you can find the eternal flame, which is part of the tomb of the unknown soldier. This eternal flame represents the soldiers that have lost their lives during World War II and have never been identified. The eternal flame runs continuously. There are guards watching over it so that it is never being turned off. What really caught my attention is the architecture of Moscow. It is something I really didn't expect. You can see modern buildings, you can see old buildings, you can see historical buildings and residential areas such as this one here behind me. These are housing blocks that all have a certain style depending on the time they have been built. Here behind me you can see another building that really stands out. This is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and it has been built in the Stalinist style. It is one of the 7 sisters, which are skyscrapers that have been built in this Stalinist style. This one has been built in between the late 50s and the early 60s. It does remind me a little bit of a building that also stands in New York. I don't know if you see the similarity, but that was the first thing I thought about when I saw this. So here in Moscow, you see things that truly remind you of Western countries. Somehow, I didn't expect it to be like that, to be honest. Now, let's talk about the unexpected. And that is, at least for me, this part here behind me. Moscow is so much more than just the historical center. Moscow is quickly developing and you can see it right here in Moscow city. This is the part that is a little bit outside the historical center, yet it is not too far away. And here you can see a lot of modern skyscrapers and a skyline that can definitely keep up with skylines of mega cities such as New York or Shanghai even. Especially in Moscow city, I noticed a lot of construction work. It seemed like Moscow is developing very quickly. There's a reason behind all of these construction projects here in Moscow, but I will talk a little bit more about that in this video, which will be coming out soon, so make sure to subscribe to the channel to not miss out on that one. One thing that also surprised me were these kind of ferries over there. These are electric ferries here in Moscow, which you can take. It's super cool and pretty futuristic as well. It is the world's only electric ferry that runs all year round. Even during cold Russian winters, the ferry can easily break the ice of the Moskva River. We've crossed the Moskva River and are now in Moscow city. And honestly, I was not expecting anything like this at all. These huge skyscrapers behind me are what make up this part of Moscow. These are mostly office buildings, there are shops and stores and even malls here, but there are also some apartment buildings here. And what is really calling my attention is the fact that this is a huge contrast here to a lot of other parts of Moscow. Actually, right here, you can see these towering modern skyscrapers, while just over there are a few apartment blocks that look rather old. So it is a huge contrast between the modern and the old Moscow. And even the old historical part is really not far away. You can compare this area here of Moscow a little bit to the Canary Wharf in London, which is also the business center of the city, that is not far away from the historical center, but a little bit outside of it. This area here is the business area. It is basically the economical heart of the city. And it has been started to build in the 90s, so the development of this area here has been extremely fast. Moscow City symbolizes the new but also the capitalist Russia. Let me know in the comment section below if you expected an area with such modern skyscrapers here in Moscow or not, because I most certainly had no idea that this existed here. Look at that! How cute is this? I love it! That's a robot, a delivery robot. It's the first time I'm seeing this. I know it exists in various countries already, but in Europe it doesn't, and it's the very first time I'm seeing something like that. That's super cute. They deliver food, but also other things that you can order through applications such as Yandex, for example. Walking through Moscow was full of surprises. Maybe I didn't prepare myself well enough for Moscow, but there were so many things I did not expect. Moscow is beautiful. Wherever I went, I saw stunning architecture, a very well-developed city, and Moscow is extremely clean and organized. I felt extremely safe in the city. So what is it like to be in Moscow in 2025? It's a city living a life of contrasts. You see some undeniable visible signs of war, like the military presence, propaganda, security measures, the different terminology, the shift in who is visiting, and of course, the sanctions that even impact tourists. But alongside that, you find a city that feels surprisingly calm and safe. A city buzzing with daily life and undergoing rapid, ambitious development. People are largely going about their normal lives, and perhaps it's surprising to some that Moscow can feel extremely safe. Russia is and has always been a very complex country with a lot of history. And therefore, I do believe that it is extremely worth it to visit Russia in general, and especially Moscow, since it's the capital and a city that is not only beautiful and has a lot of history, but also a city that is moving fast, a city that is developing quickly. I found my visit here extremely interesting. I've learned a lot. I've got a better feeling, a better understanding of what Russia really is like, and I enjoyed it a lot to be here. I hope you learned something as well. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and I will hopefully see you next week.